Hi everyone, I'm going to be making a video here about jigs fishing. I know there's a lot of people that wants to get into fishing the jigs, fishing the iron, but don't really know how to get started or what to do. So this video is just to get you in the right path. It's not going to be everything that you need to know, but it's definitely going to be enough for you to go in the right path. So let's get started. Jigs fishing. When you hear about people fishing jigs or fishing irons, especially in Southern California, irons and jigs all seems to be synonymous at times, and I use it synonymously myself. But there are really two major types. There's the deep stuff and then the surface stuff. So with the deep stuff, here I have a deep jig, and here is a surface jig. So to someone that's brand new to fishing, or that haven't been fishing for so long, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. Actually, I have friends who've been fishing forever and still don't know the difference between the two. So let's cover that. The yo-yo iron, or the deep iron, is made out of zinc. So it's a lot heavier when you're holding it. And the surface iron type are made out of aluminum, so it's a lot lighter. It's a lot lighter, obviously, so for it to be meant to fish on the surface. And there's a lot more action when you're reeling in a surface iron than you do a yo-yo iron. And we'll cover that in detail in a little bit. So in recent years, I would say the last 10 years or so, there's some other deep type jigs that were introduced to the West Coast, like this flatfall by Shimano, and the Coach Sniper, also by Shimano, that have been incorporated into the fishery here. And then you can actually fish this stuff the same way you fish yo-yo irons. There's a little bit of variables to it, but in a general sense, it's similar to the yo-yo iron. Yeah. So here we go. These are all the yo-yo irons here. These are some of the traditional Southern California type yo-yo iron. This is a Taddy 9. It's a smaller one of the smaller yo-yo irons. It's a Taddy 2A. It's slightly bigger than the Taddy 9. Works great. The 6X Junior. This is a legendary yo-yo iron jig. Most of the time when you see people fishing yellowtail with yo-yo irons, it's this jig that they're using, the 6X Junior in egg pattern. And then another, actually this is a Fire 5. This company, I think, has I don't think they're around anymore, but they used to make yo-yo irons, and it's you can see it's similarly shaped like the 6X Junior. And here is a full 6X. And this is almost I think almost twice as heavy as the 6X Junior, if I'm not mistaken. So it's meant, obviously, to go a little bit deeper than the 6X Junior, or when the yellows want the bigger irons. And then another 6X Junior in a different color. And then the flat falls and the Coach Sniper. And then the surface irons are here, and we'll cover the surface iron in details in the surface iron segment. Yeah, so those are the irons, the yo-yo jigs. As far as equipment, for me, I like to fish with a shorter rod, shorter, maybe 7-foot range, beefier rod with 40 pound test as my leader. Or if you fish mono, you prefer to fish mono, then 40-pound test for the whole reel. And the reason is the surface iron, the yo-yo jigs are typically heavier, so you need a rod with a stiffer tip to handle the heavier jigs. And also you're going deeper, so the chance of hooking into a bigger fish and breaking off, or losing it on a lighter tip increases. So I like to use a little bit heavier gear for that. So 7-foot rod, 40-pound type range is perfect. Now I've seen people, especially if you fish the lighter yo-yo line, like a Tatty 9, like this Tatty 9, I think is only a couple of pounds, maybe 3 ounces, I think. Tatty 9, or even the 6X Junior. You can fish a lighter setup, like this setup here. You can fish an 8-foot type rod. Like this is a Seeker 80H, and a smaller type reel. If you want, you don't have to use the bigger setup, and it would work fine. But keep in mind though, with the smaller reels, the revolutions will be smaller than the bigger reel, obviously. So line are coming in less than, or slower than the bigger reel, especially if both reels have the same gear ratio. So keep that in mind when you're fishing, and when you're determining what speed you want to wind it in, because it varies all the time. Different day they'll bite at different speed. Some days they want it super fast, and you're going to crank it all lightning speed back. Other times, you're going to be cranking it at a medium pace or a steady pace, and you'll get bit more. So these are the two type of gears or the two type of rods that most people would use for yo-yo. I use it too. This, especially the lighter rod here, most of the time I use that rod for 30-pound bait type. But if I do happen to use it for yo-yo, I would switch the leader out to 40-pound mono. Speaking of mono, that's something you would have to decide personally for you when you fish jigs, whether or not you want all mono or you want to fish with braid. I fish with braid everything, pretty much, with a short top shot. And that's my preference. What the advantages I see are you can fish with smaller reels. You don't have to change line as often. And braid is just stronger and more abrasive. Abrasion resistance is what I'm trying to say, than mono. But if you're more comfortable with mono, go for it. You can use that. Keep in mind, if you use braid, you might want to look for rods with a little bit softer tip, and use mono leaders as opposed to fluoro leader, because you want some sort of shock absorber. I remember when I first switched over to braid, this must have been about 10 years ago, and I remember I was using a really fast taper rod. And for those that don't know the lingo, fast taper rod just means that it's a rod that when you bend, it's real quick to go back to its position. It just snaps right back, and usually graphite rods are that way. And I remember this was an all graphite rod that I was using, and so I used braid and to a short fluoro leader for a 40-pound fluoro leader for yo-yo, and I was just busting off every fish I hooked. As soon as I hooked the fish, I would be on it for about 2 minutes, and the hook would pull. And I was getting frustrated and didn't know why. And then after the trip, I realized, oh shoot, I didn't have any absorption at all. I think I ended up just landed 2 out of 10 plus hookups or something for that trip. But those were big yellows as well, so the odds were not in your favor to begin with. They were about 200 or 250 feet deep, and then to add that benefit to or give that advantage to the fish, just not good at all. So I've learned from that experience to use a little bit softer tip rod. I use a lot more composite rods now as opposed to all graphite rods, so it has a little bit softer tip, and then also use a mono leader, and you can start off with for yo-yo, you don't have to really cast, so you can use a little bit longer leader if you like. For me, I typically use about a 6 foot leader for yo-yo, because most of the time you're just tossing it out underhand and letting it sink, so it doesn't hamper your casting that much with the knot going through the guides, as opposed to surface iron. So that's my preference for yo-yo iron. It's all braid, but if you guys like to use mono, go for it. And there's no set law one way or the other. Whatever you're comfortable with and whatever is successful. Okay, as far as the actual jigs, there's not too much as far as picking out the different type of jigs. I don't even think color matters when it's that deep, but for some reason, like I get bit a lot on the egg pattern, 6X Junior egg pattern, so I have a lot of confidence in it, and to me that's really what it boils down to, is you having confidence in what you're using. And to be honest, most of these yo-yo jigs, when you're winding it back, it's gonna spin anyway, so it's really a reaction bite from the fish. You're letting it sink down to where the fish are, or maybe down a little bit below the fish, and cranking it back up through where the school is suspended. And the fish will take a look at what's buzzing by and just bite the jigs out of it's just a predatory reaction. So as far as just picking out jigs, just pick the ones that traditionally work. Like I said, the Tatty 9, 6X Junior, 6X full size. I don't think you're gonna go wrong. And then pick popular colors like the fried egg or the mint color. Blue and white works well too. And anything with red, when red crabs are around, works excellent. As far as strategy, the captain's going to let you know how deep the fish are when they're over the school. For instance, if he's telling you, hey, they're down 100 feet or so, then let it go down to just below that. I would let it go down to about 180 feet and then just crank it back up about halfway through. Let's say you're letting it down 180 feet. You don't have to crank it all the way up to the surface. It's if you've never done this before, it's really tiring. And if you're cranking it all the way up to the surface, it's a lot of it is just wasted motion. So you want to crank it up halfway and let it go back down, so that you're spending most of your time in the strike zone where the fish are, because that's where you need to be to increase your odds of hooking one of these things. Yeah, another thing about yo-yo iron is I get asked sometimes, and even my friends do this. People would ask, would you fish a yo-yo iron on their surface? And the reason I think is simple is because a lot of people who are not used to casting jigs, they find the yo-yo iron a lot easier to cast because they're a little bit heavier. So it's easier to cast without getting backlash. Be able to get it far out. You can, but like I mentioned earlier, they don't really swim. They kind of spin. So if there's a school breaking, I don't fish yo-yo iron when they're on the surface at all, unless I'm doing yo-yo or I'm fishing yo-yo, fishing deep at the moment. And then there's a school breaking fish nearby, and then I don't have time to go grab my jig stick, and I would just wind this in and make a cast out there. And if you're ripping it through the school when they're up and boiling, I'm pretty sure it'll get bit. I've seen people get bit doing that. But as far as just specifically using this for surface iron, you'll just get tired before you have any real success, because it's a lot heavier. If you're fishing it, if you're winding it in on the surface, it's the same as if you're yo-yoing deep. It's just a lot of winding motion to keep it up on top. Because if you're winding it, if you don't wind it fast, it's just gonna sink, obviously. And the other thing, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really swim; it kind of spins. So I don't recommend it. But if you're just starting out and you are much more effective at casting the heavier yo-yo iron, go for it. Especially these Tatty 9s. I think if you're gonna fish like a yo-yo iron on the surface, the Tatty 9s will probably be the best bet. Then yeah, go for it and do that. There's nothing wrong with it. If you get bit, more power to you. And as you cast, the more you'll be comfortable, and then you can start to cast lighter and lighter weight, which would lead you to the surface iron. The other stuff, the other jigs that we were talking about earlier, the Cold Sniper, these are actually really good as a surface lure. Just do more of a crank and stop kind of deal, so it flutters and it gets bit, or even a straight crank through the surface, it would get bit really well. And they're heavy, like the yo-yo iron, and it casts a mile. As you can see, it's very streamlined, and it's pierced the wind. You can pretty much cast this way out there. So these are the options for you guys to do yo-yo. So if you have any questions, please put your comments below, and I'll try to answer any questions you may have. Good luck.